Hello, this is SK Williams, and this is an unscheduled video because I can't speak freely on the platform any longer. So, if you will skip ahead the requisite quarter of an hour, then I shall get to the point of this video. But I will tell you this much. It is actually a reply to comments that I ought to be able to post freely, but can't. I post Spanish, and I must use code language and odd spelling in order to get them to remain. So, for now, just skip ahead in the silent section of the video for 15 minutes. But keep in mind, I will be using euphemism in order to get this across. Hello, this is S.K. Williams, and if you got through the 15 minutes of silence, I thank you. This is my third and final reply video to a comment section, because I can't reply normally there, because the tube of you does not allow it. I have to be creative in my spelling and word choices, and even then can only post 2 or 3 sentences. I don't know why the tube of you has singled me out for such treatment, but they have. I find it distasteful to reply to people who leave comments in a comment section by making a video, because it's a one-way exchange, and I have tremendously more of an advantage considering the nature of it. And I've had someone do this to me too, and it's not something that I like. At the same time, there are mitigating circumstances here. I literally can't leave posts because of the tube of you deciding I don't have that right for some reason. And I have to be creative in my spelling anyway when I do. This would, though, and I will apologize to the 2 people I'm actually addressing. I don't think one of them especially is a particularly good person, but they still don't deserve this treatment. But this is what I am reduced to under the circumstances. Still, I'm mostly addressing broad, general comments that you see made within the holy religion of atheism. And I will remind you, the holy religion of atheism is secular humanism. I'm not saying atheism is a religion. My position is not. Atheism is a religion. And I don't care that atheists are liars, who are going to say I called atheism a religion, then turned around and said, I'm not calling atheism a religion. I'm not calling atheism a religion. I'm saying that modern-day atheists hide behind the label of atheism and that fake definition invented by Anthony Flew back in the 1970s, which they now pretend is thousands of years old, that atheism is a lack of belief in a god, lack of a religion, and then pretend that somehow this shelters everything they say from any sort of criticism. In reality, atheism itself is a belief there is no god. Atheism is not a lack of belief in a god. It isn't really true that atheists make no claims, and it isn't true that atheists have no burden of proof. And it certainly isn't true that atheists have no burden of proof when it comes to historical claims. But atheists do have this mentality where they don't have to prove anything, and we have to believe everything they say with no evidence until it's proven wrong. And if you contradict, even if you just ask the atheist for evidence, it means you're saying they're wrong. That means you're making a claim, and you have a burden of proof. And we are dealing with historical claims about a certain man whose name I can't really use, but we will be calling him Charlie Chaplin because he made a movie called The Dictator, and the real person we're talking about is very similar to the person he played in The Dictator. For those who have eyes to eyes, let them see, ears to hear, let them hear. Of course, I will be using euphemism in order to make this video, because even 15 minutes in, the intelligence that be synthetic might still somehow find something wrong with me using these words, because I'm apparently a MAGA hat-wearing Republican, which means I'm far-right, which means I'm obviously supporting the far-right Charlie Chaplin and his far-right party, and I'm just evil that way, and I'm an evil white Christian nationalist. And it's ridiculous, but that is the situation we find ourselves in, especially since it be a contest year in the year 2024, to which we determine who shall sit upon the great throne of the American states that be united. Having said all of that, though, I've already addressed a lot of the issues, and I've also said I want to cover this topic again over on the Shoot a Bit once I have finished my Trinity video. I don't really need as much research on this one because I've been talking about this topic for years and 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 years. And while I've also thought about the Trinity for years, it's a little harder to explain it to people in a way that would help people. I haven't even been able to explain the Trinity to my Jewish girlfriend. So it's a bit more of a complicated topic for people for some reason. Having said all that, it's not really the topic of this video. The topic of this video will cover some of the same things I've covered before, or some of the things I leave out, but I'm also going to cover some of the things that were ancillary to the discussion. And first is, I already talked about Charlie Chaplin and the party he led, the Jerryland party from Jerryland. Jerryland being the nation-state he governed. At least it's the proximate name that I am using. And his hatred of a certain group of people we're going to call the Elves. The Elves, of course, we are told that the Catholic Church hated them and taught centuries of hatred of the Elves, and that it was actually official church doctrine that the Elves killed Jesus, and the Elves were cursed and damned, and the Elves were evil. And that Charlie Chaplin did nothing more than repeat church doctrine and write church doctrine into law. And even after the Second Great Conflagration, the Catholic Church maintained its official teaching that the Elves were evil and killers of Jesus and cursed and awful, and didn't change its official teaching until 1964. And this is, of course, not true. In reality, the Catholic Church condemned anti-Elvinism several times, going back to Pope Gregory the Great in the 500s, in the 590s AD. The statement that governed medieval views of the Elves was Sictus Judaicus, and you can look it up online, by Pope Callistus II, and that issue was reissued several times by several popes up to the 1400s. The Catholic Church never officially taught anti-Elvinism, in spite of what the mythology of the holy religion of atheism says. And the holy religion of atheism does have a complex mythology that it's developed over the years. That's one reason I know it's not a mere lack of belief in a God, and that includes the nonsense about Charlie Chaplin being a devout Catholic and the Catholic Church supporting him. And it's rather obvious that no contemporary source actually says that the Vatican supported the Jerryland party, or that they were enthusiastic supporters of it. No contemporary source says that Charlie Chaplin was a devout Catholic, or that Charlie Chaplin loved the church, or that Charlie Chaplin got his ideas from the church. Actual books written in the 1920s, 1930s, and 1940s all uniformly say that the Jerryland party was hostile to the Catholic Church. And in the previous video, I named certain names of authors you can look up on the Internet Archive or various other places. They all agree, no matter what they are. Atheist books agree, Christian books agree. And you may say, well, Christian books, of course they'd agree. They don't want to be associated with evil. But the thing is, the mythology of the holy religion of atheism is that the Vatican and Catholic Church, and in fact all Christians, that maybe with a handful of exceptions like the Jehovah's Witnesses, all supported Charlie Chaplin. All of them openly supported him because they saw him as a true son of the church, a true Christian fighting for Christian values, and Christian hatred of the Elves was an official doctrine in many churches, including the Catholic Church. If they were openly supporting Charlie Chaplin, we should have public acknowledgement of this. They're not thinking like people today and saying, well, even though we're in the 1930s, people a long time from now, after the war is over, will look back on the Jerryland party as evil and Charlie Chaplin as evil. So even though we fully support you publicly, we're going to write all our books as if we don't. No one's going to say that. If the church officially supported the Jerryland party, the books of the time would say that. And the Christian books of the time would say it if Christians supported the Jerryland party and supported Charlie Chaplin. And they don't. Books written during the 1920s, 1930s, and 1940s uniformly agree that the church opposed the Jerryland party, and that the church was hostile to the Jerryland party, and the Jerryland party was hostile to the church. And even that form of being good, happy Christianity that was promoted by the Jerryland party was actually designed to subvert it, rather than to support actual Christianity. And of course, the poster that I was talking to mentions the agreement between the Vatican and the Jerryland party. There was no agreement. It was a concordant, which is a peace treaty. And the ironic thing about the concordant is that atheists keep bringing it up as proof that the church fully endorsed the Jerryland Party and Charlie Chaplin's actions, when it actually proves the opposite. There would have been no concordant if the Vatican approved of the Jerryland Party and agreed with what it was doing. You see, the concordant wasn't some official stamp of approval on Jerryland Party policies. The concordant was a peace treaty that was enacted in the hopes that the aggression and hostility the Jerryland Party had imposed against the Catholic Church could be stopped. The Jerryland Party had confiscated church property, arrested priests, and even shot at bishops, and were very actively aggressive against the church. The church, understandably, wanted this to stop. So they gave certain concessions to the Jerryland Party in exchange for the Jerryland Party giving them concessions. The effort was to save Catholic lives. The effort was not to endorse the Jerryland Party and to endorse Charlie Chaplin. And Charlie Chaplin ignored the concordant anyway. It's not like Charlie Chaplin ever intended to honor it. And of course, being atheist, you're probably saying, oh, well, they only wanted to protect Catholics, so what about everyone else? Well, the concordant was between the Vatican and Jerryland. Obviously, they're only going to be talking about Catholics in it. But the Catholic Church did condemn the Jerryland Party for its attack on other groups, including the elves, which, according to atheist mythology, the Catholic Church itself hated and officially taught doctrine against. Indeed, there is the only ever German language papal bull, which I'm not going to mention the name of because of the same issues that I'm having, which clearly condemns the Jerryland Party policies. It doesn't mention them by name, but the Jerryland Party certainly knew what it was and ramped up hostility toward the church. The concordance, of course, doesn't really prove that the Vatican supported the Jerryland Party. It proves that the opposite of that was true. Having said all that, what also interests me about the holy religion of atheism is that the people in it insist that they have no religion. They just lack belief in a god, and that atheists have nothing in common with each other but a lack of belief in a god. Followers of this religion equate all atheists together while claiming that that's what I'm doing, or people like me do, that they're generalizing all atheists. I'm not really generalizing all atheists. I'm really just talking about militant atheists. You know, the kind that hate you when you say militant atheist, because there's no such thing as a militant atheist, when, of course, there is. They themselves are militant atheists. And they like that little cartoon of militant Muslim, Allahu Akbar! And he's pushing a button and he blows up a plane or something. And militant Christian, and it shows an abortion clinic in flames, and a Christian standing there holding a gun, blowing smoke off the barrel, and then it says militant atheist, and it shows a normal guy in a coffee shop. Ha ha, funny, hoo! They don't really want to show militant atheists gunning down Christians by the thousands in the Soviet Union, because the Soviet Union was actually a form of religion, guys, trust me, bro! And of course, this is disingenuous because the modern atheist movement is just as Marxist as any of the others. A lot of people in it don't know that, but when you endlessly hear them talk about Marxist concepts like, you can't possibly, Christianity can't be oppressed because it's the majority. You can't attack Christianity because it's the largest religion. That's the dialectics of power, and it's Marxist. Or when you hear about the need to deconstruct the faith, deconstruction is Marxist. It came from Marxist philosophers. Jacques Derrida, you can look him up. When you hear the idea of science and religion as two opposing hostile forces, this is the dialectic of power again, and it is a Marxist idea. There is a reason why all of the atheists that they're getting their arguments from the late 19th and early 20th century were all communist or at least socialist. And really, back in the 19th and early 20th century, there was not a difference between a socialist and a communist. They just weren't. And even the supposedly far right-wing Jerryland Party was actually a socialist party, and I'm not just saying that because socialist is in their name. I already know the argument is, they only called themselves that to win popularity. They would have called themselves anything to get support, but they weren't. Well, no, they were socialists. And for one of the posters said that every single speech Charlie Chaplin made mentions Christianity and God. This is a lie. Most of them don't. But what's weird is, the same people who would say that he wasn't a socialist will ignore him calling himself a socialist in numerous speeches. Which I can't quote here, but you can look up his speeches online. There are plenty of websites that host even English translations of the speeches. So I'm not saying, trust me, bro. I'm saying look up the speeches. Go do the actual research for a change. And don't just tell me you've done the research. Actually do it. And, of course, there's a few quotes where Charlie Chaplin is complaining about the socialists and doesn't like the socialist and calls the socialist traitors and what have you. What most people don't seem to understand, because they look at it from a purely modern, purely American perspective with no understanding of history, the quotes where he's condemning socialists are not quotes where he's condemning people who are socialists because they believe in socialist theories. The quotes where he's condemning socialists are talking about the Socialist Party. It would be like in America if you read someone condemning the Democrats and then interpreting that to mean this person opposes democracy. Or if you read an article where someone is condemning the Republicans, so you assume that he must be a monarchist because he opposes a Republican form of government. It's obvious when they talk about the Democrats, they're talking about the Democrat Party and not people who believe in democracy. It's obvious when people are critical of the Republicans, they're not critical of republicanism as a philosophy and a form of government, having a republic as your government. They are being critical of the party called the Republicans. And yet, for some reason, people think when Charlie Chaplin talks about the socialists, he's talking about people who are just socialists. And when I tell them there was actually a party called the Socialist Party, I'm apparently lying to them because they never believe that. That having been said, though, I don't think there's much more that needs to be said right now about Charlie Chaplin because I'm running out of euphemisms. It's getting a little more complicated. So I'm going to move on to another point. This person brought up that Catholics and Protestants don't like each other. He brought up this football player and who supposedly got sacked because his wife was Catholic. And, of course, the lie about Charlie Chaplin being Catholic and such like and discrimination. And then he said, religion is pathetic! And it's all because Catholics will fire you for being Protestant. Protestants will fire you for being Catholic. Am I supposed to take that argument seriously? Even the football player he mentioned wasn't actually sacked because his wife was Catholic. At least he has no evidence for it. It's all well, what other reason would there be? No one actually stated that this was true, but that's sort of the way it is with atheists. They just make an assumption and then assume their assumption is true. And then they call themselves logical for it and rational for it. It's silly. But here's the thing. I'm making this recording in 2024. Does anyone really think that in 2024 there is an extensive discrimination, intra-Christian discrimination, where Protestants will not hire you if you're Catholic, Catholics will not hire you if you're Protestant, and that it's causing such a divide? Not really. But ironically, there is a divide caused by religious differences. But it's not because religious people hate you if you're not religious, or hate you if you're not their religion. It's because the people who say they have no religion hate people who are religious, especially Christians. And that's the real irony. The guy who said, religion is pathetic! Well, what's the alternative? Becoming an atheist? Are you honestly telling me atheists are tolerant and loving and full of empathy and compassion, while Christians aren't, while religious people aren't? Atheists are the most discriminatory people around. All you have to do is look at atheist channels, and you know atheists hate Christians. And you have clear examples of discrimination from atheists. I know we're not allowed to use examples like communist countries because communism is actually a religion, bro. Trust me, bro. Communism is a religion, bro. It's not real secularism, bro. But what about the divine prophet Hector Avalos Most Holy? Dr. Giovanna Gonzalez applied for a position, a tenured position in a university, and the atheist professor, famous and renowned for his atheism, the atheist who does Bible studies, the only honest biblical studies around because he's an atheist and lacks belief and can be honest, made certain he didn't get that position by writing up a manifesto, by getting people to sign signatures. And Dr. Gonzalez was denied tenure because Hector Avalos hated his Christian faith. Hector Avalos discriminated against him for his Christian faith, and Hector Avalos led an entire university staff to discriminate based on his religion. And you want to say, religion is pathetic! We have to pretend atheism is the opposite of religion. Well, here's a non-religious atheist who discriminated. It's not a case of the Christian was being evil and intolerant and the atheist was forced to defend themselves. It's not even an example of mutual aggression. Hector Avalos prevented someone from taking a job because of his Christian faith. And Avalos is not an isolated example. There's plenty of anti-Christian hate from atheists and plenty of institutions that refuse to hire or refuse to promote Christians. And by the way, atheists, I already know mentioning all of this proves that I have the Christian persecution complex, and you're going to go into how persecution is baked into the religion and how Christians interpret disagreement as hate, but it's really not real, and I'm just imagining it because of my Christian persecution complex. You can look up the details yourself. Hector Avalos publicly had people sign a petition to get rid of someone based on his religious faith. That is not a Christian persecution complex. That is a fact. And if you say, I have the Christian persecution complex and the Christian persecution complex is on full display, you're just a raging, hypocritical, lying scumbag. You want me to believe religion is pathetic because it leads to discrimination and the world would be oh so much better with atheists. When atheists discriminate. And the real joke is, atheist infighting is now legendary. Atheists themselves will say it's a mark of pride because religion is so uniform. No one disagrees, but we atheists disagree. All while pointing to infighting in religion as proof that religion is false. It's stupid. It's stupid. If everyone became atheists, the world would be worse because atheists are renowned as egotistical, self-centered narcissists who constantly go at each other's throats. And I don't care if you think that's a valid way of looking at atheists or not. All you have to do is look at how atheist groups split up, how people leave them, how there's constant infighting. Are you honestly going to tell me atheists are the ones that are tolerant? Are you honestly going to tell me that if we have to pretend atheism and religion are opposites, you're going to tell me religion is pathetic because it causes discrimination, and if we were all atheists, it would be a more tolerant world? If the majority of people were atheists, and could get away with it, Christians would be discriminated against. That's not a persecution complex, that's a fact. And if everyone were an atheist, everyone would be at each other's throats. That's just a fact. Because that's what we see in the real world. Look how rapidly people turned on Richard Dawkins. Look how rapidly atheist infighting happened over elevator gate. Look at how rapidly various institutional atheists started going against each other for Atheism Plus. Atheists aren't some united group and they're not even a group that tolerates each other. Once you fall out of line with what they think is acceptable, they will attack you even if you're a fellow atheist. And you're going to sit there and say, religion is pathetic. And you're telling that to a guy who's with a woman who is not the same religion as him. I mean, I'm supposed to be the intolerant one. I'm a Christian. I hate anyone outside of my tribe. If you're not a Christian, I see you as pure evil. And yet I'm with a woman that's not a Christian, and I don't see as pure evil. I am supposed to be intolerant of anyone who does not share my religion, and I am not intolerant of people who share my religion, and I'm talking to people who are intolerant of me because of my religion. Atheism is pathetic. So to sum up the entire thing and then end it, it's disingenuous to say communism had nothing to do with atheism, or to call it a form of religion and pretend that makes it the opposite of atheism. It's dishonest to point to David Hume and Bertrand Russell and say that those are examples of real secularism, and the communism and Soviet Union weren't what he wanted, and the Jerryland Party isn't what he wanted, when he had actually the same ideas. He just wanted to go about it differently. It's dishonest to pretend that you can just label things you don't agree with religion and then pretend it has nothing to do with atheism like Sam Harris does. And it's dishonest to pretend atheists are so tolerant and loving when they're not, and then to say religious people are all discriminating when that's just an oversimplistic nonsense. And now you're going to whataboutism with me? But the simple reality is, most Christians don't hate people for being different types of Christians. Most Christians don't hate people for not being Christian at all. That's what atheists do. Atheists are the ones being intolerant today. Well, I don't have much else to say, so I'm going to take my leave. Thank you. God bless, and goodbye.